Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masech to Shavuot daf Chavav. We're going to begin on the very top of Chavav with Aleph, the top line. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Eno Chayev El Al Asid Lavoy. When it comes to being Chayev a carbon of Yored for Shavuos Bitoy, it's necessary for a person to have made a Shavuot in the future. In other words, I will eat or I won't eat. However, a shvuah of the past, I ate, I didn't eat, so that's not considered, according to Rabbi Shmuel, shvuas bitu, that's shvuas sheker. However, Rabbi Kiva says, no, it's not true. Even though it does say lahar lahete, which is mashma in the future, however, we say that there's a ribo in the pasuk to include even past, that you would also be chayav a carbon of yared even for the past. So that's the machlokas. So Tanur So it says lahar lahete v'enule el devarim sheish behen haraba hatava. So this is, as Rabbi Kiva pointed out, it's mashma only something which is good or bad. She'ein behen hara v'hatava minayin. How do we know if, let's say, something neutral? Talmud Leimer, and over here we have a pasuk, oy nefesh ki sishma levata b'savasayim. When a person makes a shvuah, which is basically uttering anything with their lips. So therefore, the fact that it says that in this language is a riboy to include anything. So, ainli el haba. I would only know maybe we're talking about in the future. How do we know even something which took in the past? You're also chayiv. So again, we see Rabbi Kiva holds that when it comes to being chayiv a carbon of yared, it's not only l'asib, but it's also in the past tense. If you look at the pasuk, it's clear it's only talking about in the future, but not in the past. So Rabbi Kiva, which is again basically similar to our Mishnah, that the pasuk literally says good and bad. How about Damarim Shein Behen Hara B'Atav B'Nayin? So Amrlo Mariba Kaso. So he said because there's an extra, the pasuk has a riboy. So Amrlo, Rabbi Kiva said, okay, in Riba HaKaso L'Kach, Riba HaKaso L'Kach. So Shaper Kamerli Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shmuel. Really, it's a good question. What Rabbi Kiva is saying is because Rabbi Shmuel says, well, how do I know it's beyond just Ra Leit? Well, because there's a riboy in the pasuk, the Matavos Masayim. So that's including anything. So if it's including anything, it shouldn't just include the past and the future. It should also include shuls in the past. So Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel, Shishimish Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. So Rabbi Shmuel served Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. Shahaya Darish as koil hatayr kula b'chal prati. So he darshan kol pratim. Ihu not mi darsh b'chal prati, and therefore he's going to do the same thing. His Rebbe was known as the Klal Prat Rebbe. However, Rabbi Kiva Shishimas Nachmanish Gamzu Shahaya Darish as Kol Tarakul Baribu Mute. Nachmanish Gamzu, who is Rabbi Kiva's Rebbe, which is interesting. So he darshan the psukim as a riboy mute. Therefore, ihunami darsh riboy mute. So my Rabbi Kiva the darsh riboy mute. So what exactly is this machlokas? So the whole machlokas is if we're going to be able to be chayiv our oil v'yorid in the past is totally if we hold klal pran or riboy mute. Decide you. Oh nefesh kisishba. So it's really including any shua. That's a ribo. Lahar lehetiv is good or bad. It's lamiyat. That's specific. L'chayil asher yavatu adam. So chaz a ribo. Ribo miyad of ribo. Riva hakoil includes everything. So my Rabbi Riva called mili. So my miyad must be excluding something. So miyad devar mitzvah. It got to exclude something. So it's a devar mitzvah. Says Rashi, davar she'i efsherhu. It's something that you can't make as an oath. V'achanami l'mishanas yodel adam. Also, if you change something which is known to a person, okay. Rabbi Shmuel darsh kol prati. So he. And therefore, when Rabbi Kiva, he includes everything, even past shvuos in the past. I ate, I didn't eat. However, Rabbi Shmuel darsh kol prati. Again, the same pasuk. On nefesh kisishma lo atavosvasayim klal. That's a general pasuk. Lahar lehetiv is prat, that is more excluding. So klal prat klal yatadeno kina prat ma prat beforish. Because the prat is specific about the past tense, because it says raholahitim, avkol haba. Okay. Hani klola, and the second klal is asuya fil devarim shein bahen haraba tavol haba. That's coming to include even things which are not good or bad, but again, when it comes to shvuos in the future. Hani prata lemiyute fil devarim sheish behen haraba hatavol l'shavar, and the prat is coming to exclude even things which is ra'o hatava, but it's in the past tense. So ipachana, maybe it should be the other way around. Maybe Ra Hativ should work for things in the past, and things which are not Ra and Toiv should not work even in the future. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Domil Ra Hativ. It has to be comparable to them. Mish Isuri Mishum Bal Yachal Davaro. It has to be something which is past tense, in the future rather. Bal Yachal, that person should not profane that which he did. Yatzazu Shein Isuri Mishum Bal Yachal Davaro El Mishum Bal Teshakru. When it comes to the past tense, that's lying, saying I didn't eat, but you ate. You know you ate. So that's not Bal Yachel, violating an oath. You're lying. Okay. Rav Yitzchak Baravin Oimer Kro, the pasuk says like this: O nefesh ki sishmol. When it says ki sishma, when you make a shua, levatibus vasayim. So what does that mean? So me shashvua kaidemus lebitoi. This is referring to a situation where the shua comes before the bitoi. The lo shabitoi kaidemus shvua. What is that? Yatzazeh achalti v'achalti shahamaisa kaidem l'shua. It has to be that the shvua comes before the action, but over here, I ate and I didn't eat. The action came before the shvua. So it's again a different limud of why Rabbi Shmuel holds that it's only in the future but not the past tense. How about Adam b'shvua? So it says Adam b'shvua. Says Rashi Shahay Adam b'shas shvua she libolav. That a person's heart is on this shvua at the time. Pralo oinus. Says Rashi, can a mafarish kamei could go in b'shua with sha'avar. Again, you're making a shua in the past. V'ksaver shenishba be'emes, and you're actually thinking that you're saying a true shua. You actually think you're saying the truth. Okay. So anyway, we'll dissect this better. Benelam is proclamazed. Okay, so it says b'shua benelam shenis alman menashua. You forgot about it, excluding if you did it on purpose. So mimenu shenis alman menu shua, that you totally forgot about it when you did the violation. So yachol shenis alman menu chayfetz. You would think if you forgot the chayfetz. Says Rashi below shvua. We'll come a farsh. We're going to explain what that means. Shvua benelam, that you forgot the oath. Not that you forgot about the object, you forgot about the shvua. Okay. What does that mean? When they were standing in front of Rav, I swear that this is what Rav said. He made it a shvua. The Umar Oimer shvua said Rav. So Kiyasa Kamei Rav Oimer Kachad Minayu. Obviously he's held like one of them. So Malay Idach Yanab Shikrish Taboy. So is it true that I lied? Or Malay Libach Anoscha. Your heart forced you into this thing. In other words, you didn't at the time have the intention to lie. You were making sure with the right intentions. So I know for a fact, I swear to you, this is right. So therefore, you're not going to be chayiv. Vanilla mimenu, shnesal mimenu shua, yachol shnesal mimenu chayfetz. Someone lemer b'shua vanel mimenu, al elm shua hu chayiv hinu chayiv el helm chayfetz. So machle b'marava. So they laughed, which is actually a specific person, as the Gemara elsewhere says that's not everyone in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe it's a person. Bishlam a shvua mishkacha slabole chayfetz. I can understand a shvua without a chayfetz. Can go in there shvua shloi oichel pas chitin. I'm going to make a shvua that I'm not going to eat certain bread. You made a mistake in the shvua itself, and you thought that you meant I'm going to eat. So you made a mistake in the shvua itself. So, however, the shvuase inshi chefzi dakir. You remember the chayfetz, the bread. El chayfetz. So you just forgot about the right order of the shvua. Was it I'm going to eat or I'm not going to eat? El chayfetz b'lo shvua hechidami. What does this mean? a chayfetz. Let's say I'm not going to eat a certain wheat bread. You thought it was barley. So the mistake was in the chayfetz. So the shvasi dakirle, you remember that you made a shua, it's really the same thing as Helm Shvua. So they really are the same thing, which means it was a mistake, basically, to say that there's such a thing as Shvuas Chayfetz. Okay, of Chayfetz below Shvua. There's no such thing. You're right. Let's see, Rashi says that. Achasi Yata Moitzi Helm Chayfetz below Helm Shvua. You're right. There's no way you could have a Helm Chayfetz without Helm Shvua. Zui Enu Mishnah. So therefore, it was just that you should delete it. It's not correct. Okay. So Maskif law Rav Yosef. So he asked the question. Alma, what do we see? Chayfetz below Shvua l'shkachasol. It doesn't exist. I'll show you that it does. I make a shvua, I'm not going to eat wheat bread. I stick my hand into a basket, to take barley bread, which is allowed, it's not part of my shvua. And it turns out, even though my intention was to take the barley bread, I ended up taking the wheat bread. However, when I grabbed it, I mamish thought it was still the barley bread which I was intending. The achla, and I ended up eating it. The shavuasi dakerle, you made a shvua, and there was a shvua against the wheat bread. But you don't know about the chayvetz. Carbon ella amai the toughest biyadei helam shvuahu. What's the reason why you're chayav? It's not because you grabbed onto something. It's because of helam shvua, right? This is how you forgetting an oath as well, and therefore it's not necessarily a proof. Question 1. B'shua b'nelam al helm shvua hu chayiv al helm chayvetz. Beis oivim shkachsel helm chayvetz blow helm shvua umatam demand yarmer zu enu mishnah. So again, if a person makes a shvua not to eat wheat bread, and he sticks his hand to a basket thinking it's barley bread, he picks up wheat bread, but he thinks it's barley bread. So one who says that this is not a Mishnah holds that we don't find Helm Chayvetz without Helm Shvua. At the Seif, carbon and Maisi, the reason why you're bringing in carbon, Alma Shibiyado Maisi, Vahu Lo Yada Shanishma. Okay. So it's totally really on the Shvua, it's not on the Chayvetz. Okay. Lish Nachrina, Oimer Le'abayel Rav Yosef. So I say carbon the Kamaisi, Allah, the carbon you're bringing, the high pass, is Helm Shvuahu, and therefore it's the same thing. It's not because of Chayvetz. Rav Yosef Amalach Kivadach Yadi Leidachiten whom, since he knows it's wheat, Parish Minei, he would separate from it. So Helm Chayvetzu, therefore Yitaki is Helm Chayvetz. Bamin Rav Nachman, Helm Zevazeh, let's say he made a mistake about the Shua and the Chayvetz, V'zevazeh biyadai mahu. What is the din in that situation if he forgets both? Of course, once you already have Helm Shvuas, that's your chayev Karmen Yared. So what's the difference if you also have Helm Chayfetz? So Adarabah, Hari Helm Chayfetz b'yado Potter. But we said that when it came to Helm Chayfetz, they're your Potter. So Ravashi Chazina. Well, we have to look into it. Imach Meshvua Kaparish. If the reason why you separated is because of the Shvua, Hari Helm Shvua b'yadoi b'chayev. Imach Maschayfetz Kaparish. Hari Helm Chayfetz b'yado Potter. So it depends on your intention. Amar Rabbeinu Ravashi, Klum Parish Meshvua El Mishum Chayfetz, Klum Parish Mechayfetz El Mishum Shvua. They're interlocked. Ella Lo Shna, and therefore this is interesting. Rashi who Potter, and therefore you're Potter. V'aminu Rabbi Rav Nachman. Okay, 1 second. Let's see if there's a question here. Nefesh ki sishmel rola heite v'chol asher yavanu hadam b'shvua ma'im matin l'man dedarish ribu mitoi u'man dedarish klal prati. Okay, so this actually we did have, so let's just do this quickly. This is TB 21. So he said it could be Mamaya Davar Mitzvah, which is again TB 21, which we also saw that Rashi. So let's see, Miyut Devar Mitzvah, or Alternatively, as we already know, it could be mamaya a shvua l'sha'avar, a shvua in the past. Okay, according to Rabbi Shmuel. Right? Kol haba, it has to be laba, not a shvua in the past. Okay. All right. Right. So that was quite wrong, but now we know the answer. All right. Let's continue. So, Bomini Rabbi Rav Nachman, as we continue to Chavav B'Beis. So, he asked the following kasha: Ezu ishkaga shvuas bitoy l'sha'avar. What constitutes a shoygeg when it comes to a shvuas bitoy as a past action? So Rashi says, "Kivan de'inan adam b'shvua heichem shkachs l'shoygeg." If a person has to have intention at the shvua that he's intending to do this, so how do we find a case of shoygeg? Idi yada, if he knew about it at the time of the shvua, mezidu, and therefore it's shvua sheker. Idi lo yada onasu. If he doesn't know, he's amazing. Armalei ba'omer yodeya ni sheshvua zu asura. He says, I know that this shvua is asur. He carbon. Go low. He didn't know that there's actually a lav. He didn't know that there was a chiv carbon. So even though he was like mazed on everything else, but he was shkagas carbon. And we have this in Masechta Shabbos. Come on, kumun baz. Yomer shkagas carbon shma shkaga. That is considered to be enough to be shaygig over there to be chayav chatas. Over here, you would be a shaygig. Because you thought that there was no chiyav carbon, so therefore it's possible that we can find a case of shkog shuas bitoy l'shavar. Afil teim rabbanon. So the truth is, even though that's munbaz's shita, which the rabbanon disagree with over there, the truth is the rabbanon could agree because ankan lo plik rabbanon had a munbaz el b'chol tarakula delav chidishu. Normally, we're not going to say this. We don't hold that when it comes to shkogas carbon that's considered a shaygeg l'chol tarkula. Avahacha the chidishu. However, when it comes to this whole case, it's a chiddush because when it comes to shuas bitoy, how could you be chayav a carbon? It's a lav shin b'maisa. Nonetheless, you're still chayav. So that's a chiddush. The b'chol tarkula lo ashkechan to maisi carbon. We normally don't find a person has to bring a carbon on a lav shin b'maisa. The alfinan mi'avodah zara, as we learn out from avodah zara. I'm not sure why there aren't a lot of Rashis over to explain. So avodah zara is an action. But over here to still bring a carbon. So even though normally they would not agree to munbaz, however, when it comes to this case, it's a unusual circumstance. Question 2: Madua parsha shvuas bitoy hi chidush. My nafkamina. Okay. So chidush the kivan b'chol terakul mishkachas lav shenbo kares dimaisi carbon. When I wrote lav shenbo maisa, the lav she'ein bo kares. Right. So okay, it's true it's a lav shenbo maisa, but that's about malchus. Lav shenbo kares. Normally you would say in order to be chayav a carbon b'shaygeg, you're chayav b'mezid kares. But over here, that's not the case. So you have to bring a carbon even though it's a lav shenbo kares, and therefore they'll agree to munbaz that shkogas carbon havishkaga. Okay. So the real reason, the real chiluk, or real chiddush, is again that even though there's no kares, still you're chayav a carbon b'shaygeg. You still chayav a carbon. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay. So bomine ravina marava nishva al kikar. A person makes a shvua on a bread. Okay. Umistaken aleha, and then he's in a life-threatening situation. Mahu mistaken. What do you mean? Literally mar. What's the whole issue? Like you have to eat it, or else no, I'm going to violate a shvua. Of course. Let's say he's going to die, but as Rashi says, barav, he's hungry, v'inami lo nis'al mimenu he oichla of oichla b'shaygeg. He didn't really realize this, and he ate it b'shaygeg. It was nelam b'shvua, but he was mitztayer, so he wasn't in a normal frame of mind, or maybe he'd be allowed to do it anyway. So is he going to be chayav carbon in that case? El mitztayer b'alcha b'shkaga shvua mai. Armuavina sham yadiyaso maybe carbon al shkagaso. We know that if a person violated something and he wants to do tshuva, so then we'll say, okay, then you can bring the carbon. However, lo sham yadiyasoi, and maybe carbon al shkagasoi. However, if when you were aware you would have done it anyway, so then you're not going to bring a carbon. So too over here, this is considered to be lo sham yadiyasahu, because this is something that basically is technically allowed on some level. Who's mitztayer, so therefore he would not bring a carbon. Amar Shmuel. Gomer b'liboy, when you have this thought process in your heart, it's not enough. You also have to say it. Let's say all you have is you say it, you don't think about it. How do we know you also have to believe? When so it sounds like all you have to do is say it. So it sounds like you do have to have intention in your heart. If you only say it, but it didn't actually cross your mind to actually say it, and it never came out. In other words, you never said it. It is not considered an oath, even if you had in mind or in your heart. Just thinking. So Omer Rav Sheshes tarts imahachi. If you say it, you don't think about it. In other words, you were thinking about wheat and barley. In other words, you were thinking these bread specific, and then you ended up saying stam. Therefore, it comes to include that as well. So it sounds like even nediv leiv you're chayav, even if you didn't actually say it. It actually says it there. So it's different. So I want to learn over there. No, so when it comes to truma in kachim, so as Rashi says, carbon. If you make a neder to bring a carbon, even if all you did was think about it, then you're going to be chayav. So too when it comes to kachim, but it's only those two places. Says Rashi, trumas malachas hamishkan ksiba kol nediv leiv havia. It can be kachim ksib b'chizkiyahu b'sefer devar hayamim v'chol nediv leiv oilos. So anichamadim and malamdim. So you can't learn out of Ma'amatzino, Sada Shama from everyone else because it's only because these two are dafka. But Elman Yam and Malamdin is until there's three. So Ma'iko Memar. So Havi Chulan v'Kanshim or Gamrinan. So the truth is that even if it's true, you can't learn out from these things because these things are kachim or truma. But we're talking about a ned, a stam, a shua. That's chulan. And therefore, you cannot learn one from the other. We're going to stop there. Question 3. Dahavi truma v'kachim shnik zomen kiyachad. Heicha ksiva b'truma, heicha ksiva b'kachim v'b'li b'sagi. That's a very hard question. But Rashi says it only. B'trumas molachas hamishkan ksiv kol nediv leiv. By kachim it says v'chol nediv leiv oilos. So you just have to remember the words nediv leiv, and hopefully that will be enough to get by. Question TA 20. Him shkogas carbon chashiva shkogas l'inin carbon. Great question. So, according to Munbaz, let's get this down. TA 20. So, according to Munbaz, yes, always, but it's actually a machlokas. However, when it comes, the machlokas b'chol Torah kula. Let's see how he answers it. B'chol Torah kula, it's a machlokas. Munbaz or chachamim. However, Shavuot, which is a chiddush, kol yom ha'moeded havishgaga adkan.